Under the cover of night on February 2, 2024, the United States military launched a strategic B-1B bomber raid targeting secret hideouts of pro-Iranian militia organizations in eastern Syria and northwestern Iraq. This operation came in direct response to the attack on January 28th that tragically claimed the lives of 3 American soldiers. The mission successfully destroyed at least 84 out of the 85 targeted objectives, including command and control centers, intelligence hubs, weapon depots, drone facilities, and logistical assets. In this opening chapter, the U.S. military demonstrated not only precision in neutralizing targets, but also showcased its long-arm jurisdiction. Even in the absence of military bases in the region, the U.S. Air Force proved its capability. The Iranian government appears to have been deterred. Amidst the tension on the morning of February 4th, Iran issued a warning to the world, suggesting that its Revolutionary Guard command ships MV Bershad and MV Savits could potentially become targets of U.S. attacks. Under this pressure, MV Bershad sought refuge and ultimately opted to temporarily anchor about 5 kilometers off the coast of China's naval base in Djibouti. This vessel had been active in the Red Sea and the Arabian Gulf for months, suspected of providing intelligence support to the Houthi rebels in Yemen, particularly in locating targets for missile attacks on U.S. naval vessels. Evidence in possession of the U.S. Central Command indicates that MV Bershad played a pivotal role in a series of missile attacks by the Houthi rebels on U.S. warships, making it a potential target for a strike. Currently, the Reconnaissance vessel is concealed in waters near China's naval base, within the jurisdiction of the Djibouti government. With supplies gradually dwindling, MV Bershad will eventually have to leave its temporary safe haven. The United States is closely monitoring every move of this reconnaissance vessel, with the Associated Press warning that if Iran-backed militias continue their attacks, the U.S. is prepared to take further retaliatory measures, which may include targeting Iranian spy ships like MV Bershad. It is unlikely that Iran would dare to escalate into full-scale war if the U.S. were to strike this ship. Historically, when faced with robust military action, Iran and its allies often chose restraint. In 2023, when Israel launched a military operation in the Gaza Strip, Hezbollah had threatened to open a second front, but ultimately refrained from doing so. Iran had faced Israeli military actions in the past without taking direct retaliatory measures. This recent strike by the U.S. against Iranian proxy targets in Iraq and Syria has been met with Iranian threats, but neither China nor Russia immediately retaliated. With every step, the United States gains a clearer understanding that China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea lack genuine strength. The strike against the Houthi rebels is part of America's efforts to remove China's interest in the northeastern corner of Africa, specifically in Djibouti. The outcome of this endeavor will depend on future developments. Israel's actions against Hamas, on the other hand, amount to expelling China's influence near the Suez Canal. The strikes against Iran are aimed at completely clearing the Middle East of the Chinese Communist Party's presence. Starting from February 2nd, the United States conducted consecutive strikes against Houthi targets for 3 days, simultaneously engaging in operations in the Red Sea, Syria, and Iraq. This marks a gradual process of cleansing the Middle East of China's interests. On February 2nd, in the retaliatory strike by the United States, a large area in eastern Syria, stretching over 100 kilometers from Deir ez-Zor city to near the Iraq border in al-Bukamal, witnessed the destruction of at least 26 critical locations associated with pro-Iranian groups, including weapon depots. Syria vehemently condemned the U.S. airstrikes, considering it a grave violation of its sovereignty and resulting in significant losses. Iraq, on the other hand, issued a severe condemnation, as the targets struck within its borders were limited and the damage incurred was relatively minor. Throughout its prolonged internal conflict, the Syrian government has received significant support from Iran, particularly through the military assistance of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps Quds Force and Hezbollah, the Lebanese militia. Iran deployed military advisors to Syria, offering tactical guidance and training to government forces and their allies, significantly enhancing the combat capabilities of the Syrian government army. Moreover, the Quds Force has been responsible for supplying Syria with various military equipment, including light weapons, artillery, and anti-tank missiles, along with advanced military technology. Simultaneously, Hezbollah not only dispatched experienced combatants to engage in Syria's battles, but also participated in establishing and training local Shiite militia groups, further strengthening the Syrian government's control at the grassroots level. Iran's actions undoubtedly demonstrate Syria's willingness to allow Iranian forces to operate within its territory. Iran's fundamental goal in supporting the Syrian government is to maintain its alliance with Syria and counter the threat posed by Sunni extremist groups to itself and its allies. Through this military aid, Iran aims to sustain a friendly Syrian regime, protect Shiite holy sites, expand its influence on the eastern Mediterranean coast, and build a strategic resistance against the United States and Israel. Due to factional struggles within the Iraqi government, some politicians, driven by personal interests, turn a blind eye to the assistance provided by the Quds Force to the Popular Mobilization Forces, PMF. Moreover, Iraq lacks effective border control, enabling the free movement of individuals and weapons across its borders with Iran. Therefore, the weapons of PMF-affiliated militia groups come from both the Iraqi government and the Quds Force. In this recent U.S. strike in Iraq, the primary targets were the weapon depots of pro-Iranian militia groups. The weaponry stored in these depots includes supplies from both Iraqi government and the Quds Force, as well as possibly other countries. Iraq legally requires armed organizations to use the weapons and equipment provided by the government. So how do pro-Iranian militias in Iraq receive support from Iran? Most of these pro-Iranian militias operate under the umbrella of the PMF, which was officially established by the Iraqi government in 2014 to counter extremist organizations like ISIS. The United States maintains military presence in the Middle East through agreements with relevant countries, allowing it to station troops and use military bases within their territories. The U.S. military base in Jordan was targeted by drone attacks from Iraqi militia groups. According to international law and norms in international relations, the Iraqi government should have intervened to prevent such cross-border terrorist activities. However, Iraq not only failed to do so, but also issued severe condemnation of the U.S. airstrikes, despite repeated coordination and notifications by the United States. Iraqi Prime Minister al-Kadhimi, who is Shiite, is unlikely to openly support the United States in retaliatory airstrikes, especially given the current circumstances. So, who is supporting Iran behind the scenes? China and Russia play significant roles. China was key in obstructing U.S. sanctions on Iran. Since the United States and the European Union began imposing sanctions on Iran in 2012, China has refrained from participating in these sanctions, continuing to import oil from Iran. To this day, approximately 90% of Iran's oil exports go to China. While China has reduced its oil imports from Iran under U.S. pressure, decreasing from 30 million tons in 2018 to 12 million tons in 2023, the total value still reaches around $15 billion US. Although a portion of this amount is settled in Chinese yuan, about $7 billion US, the remaining $8 billion is settled in US dollars. How is this dollar settlement possible? This is where China's Kunlun Bank comes into play. In China's international trade circles, if you want to engage with the Iranian market and receive payments from Iranian customers, you must open an account with Kunlun Bank. Kunlun Bank, formerly known as Karamay City Commercial Bank, came under the control of China National Petroleum Corporation in April 2009. It specializes in conducting transactions in sensitive regions such as Iran, Cuba, Russia, North Korea, and others, making it the preferred bank for businesses inside China to conduct transactions with sanctioned countries. 95% of Kunlun Bank's business primarily revolves around handling payments from the Chinese Communist Party's top echelons for purchasing oil from Iran. In this exchange, the CCP provides Iran with weapons, and Iran supplies oil, with all transactions facilitated by Kunlun Bank. It can be said that this bank serves as a dedicated money laundering institution for the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. According to revelations from overseas sources with knowledge of the CCP's internal affairs, these sources have disclosed that as of 2011, Iran had approximately $200 billion in its accounts at Kunlun Bank. Kunlun Bank primarily handles international fund settlements without using SWIFT, instead employing a book entry offset method. For example, if China National Petroleum Corporation purchases $1 million worth of oil from Iran, it issues a $1 million IOU to Iran through Kunlun Bank. When Iranian businesses buy goods within Iran, they can apply for the purchase of US dollars in Iran, say $50,000. At this point, Iranian banks will inform Kunlun Bank that $50,000 has been settled on their side, and now China only owes Iran $950,000. Upon receiving the instructions, Kunlun Bank notifies the Chinese business that $30,000 has been credited to their account so they can come to settle it in yuan. During the transaction process, even though both Iranian buyers and Chinese suppliers are using the US dollar as the transaction currency, the actual dollars do not circulate. It's merely an offset of accounts between these two countries. China uses this method to continually provide a lifeline to sanctioned countries on behalf of the CCP. According to data from the global trade analysis company Kepler, Iran's oil exports to China reached a peak of 1.5 million barrels per day in August last year, the highest level in a decade. However, despite bringing in billions of dollars in revenue, U.S. sanctions and restrictions limit Iran's ability to effectively utilize these funds. These funds are mainly stored in Kunlun Bank, and Iran struggles to access them due to sanctions. Meanwhile, Chinese exporters are cautious about exporting to Iran to avoid running afoul of U.S. sanctions. Considering that there are limited goods China can buy from Iran, it's not just about purchasing weapons. High-ranking officials also desire some luxury Western products. In light of these challenges, Iran actively sought to unfreeze assets last year, such as releasing $6 billion through a U.S.-Iran prisoner exchange agreement specifically allocated for humanitarian trade. This urgency indicates that despite generating revenue through oil sales, sanctions have made it difficult for Iran to utilize these frozen or restricted funds. Given this backdrop, the Biden administration has an opportunity to leverage this predicament as a bargaining chip. By partially easing sanctions on Iran, the U.S. can allow Iran to use these frozen or restricted funds, incentivizing cooperation on nuclear issues and other related matters. The relationship between Iran and China is exceptionally close, even surpassing Iran's ties with Russia. The Chinese leadership highly reveres Iran's revolutionary leaders, including Ayatollah Khomeini and its current supreme leader Ayatollah Khamenei. They believe that China's strategic confidence is partly derived from Iran's support in energy supply and shared government ideologies. This deep-seated resonance has led to a unique cooperative relationship between China and Iran, particularly under the leadership of Ayatollah Khamenei. The presence of Ayatollah Khamenei and his family in Hong Kong and Singapore further underscores the tight connection between the two sides. In light of this, resolving the issue of China's influence in the Middle East hinges on effectively dealing with Ayatollah Khamenei. The health condition of Iran's supreme leader has attracted international attention given his central role in Iranian politics and his staunch anti-American stance and nuclear views. Analysts have noted several instances of Khamenei trembling during public appearances in recent years, suggesting a visible decline in his health. His passing could potentially lead to significant shifts in Iran's domestic and foreign policies. Iran might adopt a more moderate approach, particularly concerning the nuclear agreement, which presents an opportunity for the international community, especially the United States, to address the Iranian issue. The U.S. government continues to emphasize the legitimacy of its military strikes against Iran and its proxy forces in Syria and Iraq, particularly facilities associated with the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Quds Force. As a result, the U.S. plans to continue airstrikes aimed at eliminating critical facilities that pose threats to the United States and its allies. Furthermore, former National Security Advisor John Bolton openly called for more direct military actions against Iran in a television interview. His statements are viewed as a potential precursor to more resolute and extensive military strategies by the United States against Iran. Simultaneously, the United States continues to impose sanctions on entities and individuals related to the Iran issue, continually updating blacklists that include terrorists and specifically designated nationals. This strategy aims to ensure effective tracking and addressing of these listed individuals, particularly if they enter areas of concern such as Iraq or Syria. Ayatollah Khamenei's frail health may not be life-threatening, but the airstrikes could lead to significant psychological stress for him. Given his current health condition, his longevity remains unclear. Moreover, finding a successor with the leadership and influence of Ayatollah Khamenei presents a challenge for Iran. The scarcity of such a figure may make it more challenging for China to align Iran's political regime with its foreign policy vision, especially considering potential new leaders might not fully align with China's policy stance. Considering the U.S. history of supporting anti-government forces and the Free Syrian Army, the United States may adopt a similar strategy towards Iran. After a series of airstrikes on Iran, the U.S. may further mobilize its special forces, such as the Green Berets, to conduct special missions deep within Iran's territory, potentially sparking local uprisings. As the conflict escalates, a significant number of weaponry could end up in the hands of Iranian civilians, putting individuals listed on the U.S. sanctions list at greater risk. Particularly, those designated as terrorists or specifically designated nationals may face detention and be sent to facilities like Guantanamo Bay. In recent years, the Saudi government has significantly increased its purchase of low-cost weapons from China, with reports suggesting that about 50% of Saudi Arabia's weapons arsenal is now of Chinese origin. Additionally, with China's technical assistance, Saudi Arabia may soon develop Dongfeng 41 intercontinental missiles capable of carrying nuclear warheads. Furthermore, Saudi Arabia, with China's support, has established a P3-level biosafety laboratory on the coast of the Red Sea, heightening concerns about potential biological warfare risks. These developments compel the United States to promptly and effectively address new challenges. In this context, the U.S. strategy not only includes incentivizing internal change forces within Iran, but also involves exposing the true intentions of Iran's primary supporters, China and Russia. Specifically, facing threats to international shipping from Houthi militias, the United States has called on China to exert pressure on Iran to halt its military actions. This request aims to openly test China's actual capabilities within its Middle East strategic layout. The activities of the Houthi rebels in the Red Sea have not only increased transportation costs, but also posed a threat to the global economy, impacting China's significant investments in ports near Egypt. Furthermore, China has every reason to hope for an end to the Houthi rebel attacks. The meetings between U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi, along with a continuous request made by the United States to China, demonstrate the U.S.'s expectation that China takes diplomatic action to resolve this issue. However, China's stance on this issue is complex, and it seems unwilling to allow the United States to gain an advantage in the Middle East. China's official response to the situation in the Red Sea primarily calls for the cessation of attacks on civilian ships while maintaining a reserved attitude toward the U.S. military actions against the Houthi rebels. Recent reports suggest that China has exerted pressure in its recent meetings with Iran, urging Iran to take action against the Houthi rebels to avoid damaging their commercial cooperation with China. China has adopted a cautious stance, not explicitly supporting either Iran or the West, a behavior pattern that analysts view as not aligning with the expectations of a responsible global power. This strategy challenges China's widely perceived influence in the Middle East and highlights limitations in its global strategic implementation. Russia is one of Iran's key supporters, but the relationship is not without controversy. Iran's defense minister, Amir Hatami, confirmed on July 21st last year that Iran decided to cancel its plans to purchase Su-35Se fighter jets due to doubts about Russia's credibility in arms trade. Prior to this, the commander of the Iranian Air Force, Hamid Vahedi, had confirmed Iran's purchase of up to 64 Su-35S fighter jets, with 2 S-400 air defense missile battalions and a military satellite, with a total deal amounting to $10 billion. The initial batch of 3 Su-35Se aircraft arrived in Iran in April this year, but Russia later refused to provide technology for component production, maintenance support, and simulation training equipment for the Su-35Se, severely limiting the operational capability of these fighter jets. Iran also had concerns that Russia might restrict the use of Su-35 aircraft in specific situations, similar to Russia's constraints on Armenia during the 2020 Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. Ultimately, the Iranian Air Force abandoned the deployment of Su-35Se fighters. Iran, a key player in the Middle East, has long played an important role on the chessboards of China and Russia. It has gradually realized that being just a pawn in the strategies of major powers may not guarantee its long-term national interests. Iran faces a critical juncture, whether to continue being deeply entrenched in its existing alliances or expand its diplomatic strategy to establish more robust connections with the broader international community. The viewpoint of a former British intelligence officer adds another dimension to this discussion. His stance reflects a widely accepted notion. While launching a war against Iran may not be a wise choice, a resolute approach must be taken regarding the various militias and religious ideological armed groups supported by Iran. Failing to take effective measures against these forces could plunge the Middle East into deeper chaos and instability.